Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan Doherty. I've been a SRE for 3 years at LinkedIn. For the past 9 years, I've been racing in a series called 24 Hours of Lemons. During that time, I've learned a lot about team management, incident response, project management, and how to build reliable systems. So what is 24 Hours of Lemons? It's a nationwide racing series for teams of 4 to 6 people racing $500 cars in endurance races at real racetracks around the country. It's actually one of the biggest racing series in the US for participation. Car counts range from 40 to over 200 on a track, and you have to buy and build a car for $500 or less. Safety and driver accessories are unlimited. And here's an example of what it's like to drive. You can see it's real racing on a real racetrack, hundreds of cars, and but all pretty crappy cars. So how is it similar to being an SRE? It's teams of 4 to 6 people. You have to build and maintain a system that is reliable, fast, and easy to fix. You have on-call shifts, similar to you have on-call shifts, or you have driving stints, which are like on-call shifts, and you have handover. This is a typical handover for racing. We have to refill the car. On-track time is number one, which is similar to uptime and availability. We have incidents, working sessions, and postmortems. This is an example of a quote working session where we're underneath the car. The center support bearing that holds up the drive shaft fell off during a race, and the drive shaft was resting on top of the exhaust, and we drove for half a day before we noticed. So I've learned a lot in the past 9 years of racing. The biggest thing I've learned is about what it takes to manage a team. First thing I've learned is that team is everything. It does not matter what car you drive, the tools you have, or your strategy, team is number one. You can give the crappiest car and tools to a great team, and they will find a way to win. The reverse is not true. I've seen many teams show up to a race with a winning car, a fast one, obviously cheating, and within 1 hour, that car is either blown up or they have crashed. And so the only thing that matters is the team. People are infinitely adaptable and flexible. Systems are not. And the quote that we use in Lemons is tighten the nut behind the wheel. The next thing I learned is that team cohesion is critical. You need to trust your team, and the way you get there is through shared failures and wins. My formula is common goal plus shared struggle plus trust equals a team. And I really like the 5 dysfunctions of a team system. It's a great book, highly recommend checking it out. Second thing is tools are number 2. So after you have an amazing team, you need to buy the best tools that you can afford. You can fix problems hundreds of times faster with better tools, and you can fix problems that you couldn't fix before. Tools are a multiplier for your team. Buy the best tools that you can afford. Here's an example. We have to remove a nut from the rear half shaft. It's a giant nut. It's torqued on there, really strong. And previously, we had to do it manually with a large breaker bar, multiple people holding things. Took a couple guys, took maybe 5 or 10 minutes. But once we bought this 1,900 foot-pound impact gun from a guy who used to help build bridges, this takes all of 5 or 10 seconds. So that's an example of how much more effective you can be with better tools. Next is feed your team. Food keeps them running, keeps people happy, it helps people bond. And I've had teammates who try to work or drive on an empty stomach and have problems. One example is many years ago, it was the morning shift, about 8 o'clock, driver goes out. After about a half hour, 45 minutes, he radios in and says, "Hey, I'm not feeling good, I have a headache, I'm just not feeling right, I should come in, this is getting dangerous." He comes in, sits down and thinks, and then a few minutes later he says, "Oh yeah, I didn't eat breakfast." And that's when I learned that you've got to make sure your team eats. People forget, they get distracted, but if they don't eat, they will not be effective. There's also a time when we were at a different race and a driver was about to go out and he said, "Hey, I haven't had lunch." And I was eating a sandwich and I just gave it to him. I said, "Eat this. Like, you've got a couple minutes before you're getting in the car." And so I wanted to make sure that he was going to be effective and able to handle his stint. Feed your team. I'm the team captain of my team, so that comes with other responsibilities. The big one I say is do the boring stuff. So an example is, this is the night after our first day of racing, and we need gas. So while the team is at the track working on the car, improving it or fixing things, I take the truck and fill up all of our gas cans. This takes about an hour or more. But during that time, the people on my team who are smarter than me and better than me at fixing our car can do it, and I will handle the boring stuff. Keep your team happy. Do little things to make them happy. One of our traditions is ice cream at the track, so I always make sure to get it. It makes them happy. It's just a nice little tradition. Second things I've learned is incident management. Things break a lot in Lemons. I've gone through about a half a dozen engines, a few transmissions, differentials, brakes have caught on fire, we've crashed multiple times, we've had problems where the car is, ECU is overheating on track, so it starts bucking, and the only thing we can do is to turn off the car and turn it back on again while we're driving. So pretty exciting stuff. First thing, get out of the hole. Don't ask why you're in it. Do not bring up things about why something happened or who did what during an incident. It is 100% ineffective and slows down the team. Focus on getting out of the hole. Don't label things as sucky or terrible. No adjectives or evaluations. This adds a lot of negativity and emotions. People get defensive, drags on their motivation. Does not help. With limited space and single problems, it's oftentimes better to have one person lead and do the work with the rest of the team supporting them. This is called the surgeon model. It came from, I believe, the Mythical Man Month book. So if someone's working on a problem, hand them tools, hold lights, assist them. The best thing you can do when you're in an incident is ask, how can you help? Don't just start jumping in trying to do things. So here's a funny story. There's a nut that's welded onto the oil pump on the front of the BMW engine, and the way you have to get it off is to grind it off. So that's one thing we've done. When you're debugging a system, create a hypothesis and then test it. Don't assume that your hypothesis is right. You have to prove yourself right. Challenge your assumptions. Many things fail for non-obvious but simple reasons. So for us, it's things like, is the gas tank full? Is it actually plugged in? Always check the most basic things first before you jump into a more complex hypothesis. So we've seen other teams where they've tried to fix their car for hours. It won't start. They can't figure out why. And then once they finally open up the gas tank, they realize there is no gas. So always challenge your most basic assumptions. Is it plugged in? Is it turned on? Are you pressing the right thing? Are you looking at the right thing? Do those things first, and they will probably fix half or more of your problems. As you can imagine, running a race team and building a car requires a lot of project management, and I've learned a lot of things through that. So it's interesting with racing. It's involuntary shipping. The race will happen without you. There is no way to ask for an extension. So this changes your priorities and how you plan. Picture writing code, and at a certain time of the day, someone will literally grab your laptop and go plug it in to the server. So you're going to think a little bit differently about how you prioritize things and how you build things. You're going to focus a lot more on getting things working first and then making it perfect. When you're working on a project, make a list. Order it by priority and work through it. No exceptions. That's all you need. You need one list that everyone looks at, that's up to date, and it's reviewed daily, or whenever you start working, if you're on a project where maybe you work a little bit less often than daily. If it works, ship it. MVP for everything. Only when it breaks or you absolutely need improvements, then you can work on it. When you're trying to get something out the door as fast as possible, the bar is much lower, and you only go back to it and raise it when it's critical. So in lemons, it's all about reliability. Time on track is the most important thing. It doesn't matter if your car is faster. If your car is not on track, it doesn't matter. So I've learned a lot about how to build reliable systems. The first is that reliability and predictability is much more important than speed. So this car placed 11th out of 180 cars. This is a hybrid, completely stock, has no performance parts on it. Why did it place 11th out of 180? Well, they had an amazing team. It was semi-pro race car drivers. They had amazing tools. There was also a semi-pro team captain who brought all the tools that they needed directly to the track. And it was on track 100% of the time. Uptime and predictability at the limit, especially, is critical. So the important thing is a system that is predictable when it's driven to the limit is much easier to handle and manage than one that's very fast, but once it gets pushed to the limit, it falls over. So predictability and reliability are the two most important things to focus on. Next up, observability is critical. So we've blown up many engines many times because we didn't know that it was overheating or had low oil pressure. So after we learned from that, as you can see, we've added a lot of observability to our car. We have oil pressure, oil temp, RPM, water temp, voltage. We have live telemetry. So we have G-forces and lap times. And we have warning lights on our dashboard. And last is we have a backup, which is, as you can see, our cooking thermometer. That is an actual cooking thermometer where the end of it is plugged into our radiator. It works, and it has saved us multiple times. We've had drivers radio in and say, hey, I hear a beeping noise. I don't know where it's coming from. And we'll tell them, oh yeah, that means the car's overheating. You need to come in now. Simpler is better. Simple things tend to break less. And when they do break, they are a lot easier to debug and fix. So I focus on simple things. Simpler is better. Push the complexity to the human. Humans are much better at handling complexity and variability in their lives. So I love zip ties. I love industrial Velcro. Anything you can do to use those two things is great because they're simple and they're reliable. Stop touching working things. There is a U-shaped curve of the reliability of systems. There's a semi-famous report of reliability of planes in World War II. And the normal reliability of them is U-shaped. Things break early on in their life cycle. They tend to work for a long time and then break later on. The only time that varies is when mechanics go in and do scheduled maintenance. When you touch something, you always introduce risk of breaking it or changing it, and then it does break. So the mantra we have with our team is, if it works, don't touch it. Focus on things that are broken, and then go back if you have time and you need it. Focus on things that are working but you want to improve on. Hacks will stick around, and that's okay. In lemons, you tend to use a lot of hacks. As you can see, there's a lot of zip ties there. Those are 2 Gatorade bottles. One is an overflow for our coolant, and the other is a catch can for some oil blow-by coming from the head of the engine. But that's okay. It works. Those worked for years. They were simple. It was a plastic bottle with some holes drilled in it. So it was very easy to replace, nothing complex about it. And it was very observable. You could just look at it and see that it worked. So to wrap up, team is number 1. Tools are number 2. Have a list and stick to it. Focus on getting out of the hole. Support your teammates. Challenge your assumptions. Reliability and predictability beat performance. And remind yourself every day, we're all on the same team. Thank you.